Let's start the discussion of 08th May 2015 newspaper. Now, the NGOs rightly falls into our syllabus. So let us discuss what is the NGOs. Now, if you carefully observe, in any democracy, NGOs have a special role because they play different activities. One is policy advocacy role. It means where they advise on various issues by acting as a bridge between the people and the government. And the second thing is they help in the protection, the protective role of related to the weaker sections, marginalized, etc. If you can see the transgender rights in India, it is due to the activity of these NGOs. And the third thing is democracy is all about deliberation. It is all about public space where dissent and discussion can exist simultaneously. So, it is all about the freedoms of speech and expression which provides for the existence of this. It means any curtailment of the activity of NGOs, it has a direct relation to the curtailment of the freedom of speech in the country. Now, in this context, during UPA government, IP has given a report that the GDP growth is coming down because of the hindrance of various developmental projects by NGOs. So in this context, what it has been said is the NDA government started clamping down various foreign funded NGOs. Especially the Greenpeace is about to close its actions and the operations in India because of the choking of their funds. And reputed NGOs such as Ford Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they are also under the scrutiny. For this, the Foreign Contribution Regulations Act, it is coming handy to the government. So this governmental backlash will have a chilling effect on the activities, actions of the civil society in India. So, America and various forums expressed that as detrimental to democratic tradition of India. So whatever we can say, understand there may be certain black sheep with regard to the NGOs, but curtailing them is not into the greater interests of the Indian democracy. So next is, now with regard to NGOs, let us remember one more point. NGOs are critical to the functioning of Indian democracy, especially the youth of this country. They are getting demystified with the traditional modern patterns of the dissent, especially the political actions, especially political participation. So in this case, the public space has become more diverse and active because of the actions of these NGOs. So the dynamism of the public space, the dynamism of the dissent and the participation of the young people, it is kept alive by these NGOs. And added to the entry of the social media made it much active and diversified. So that's what is the point which I like to add over here. Now in this case, how to bring NGOs under RTI Act is one thing, and second thing is the NGOs and control of the NGOs, especially growing financial frauds among NGOs, lack of accountability among NGOs. With regard to this, the second ARC made certain valuable recommendations. Please go through that with regard to the regulation of the NGOs in India. And next is, let's get into the Juvenile Justice Amendment Act, which is passed by the Parliament recently. Now already I have discussed enough about this thing. Let's try to recapitulate what we have discussed till now. Now, I have made a small mind map for this. So what is the Juvenile Justice Amendment? Any person who has committed a heinous crime between 16 and 18 years, he will be treated as, or trial will be conducted as an adult. So in the second thing is, the particular amendment bill was sent for the Parliamentary Standing Committee and it has rejected or opposed this. In spite of this, the government wanted to go ahead. But however, one single improvement which the government has made is this. Any person, if he has committed a crime between 16 to 18 years, but if he was caught after 21 years, so crime was conducted between 16 to 18, but he was caught after 21 years of age. Then he will be tried under Indian Penal Code rather than Juvenile Justice Act. This particular provision was removed because of the demand from the opposition and the standing committee. Now, in this perspective, let us try to verify this. Now, what is the process which was set? Now, once a child is involved with a heinous crime, then the matter will be referred to a juvenile board or juvenile justice board. Now, this board will assess whether the crime has been committed as an adult or as a child. The trial will further take place on this assessment. It means the first step is the constitution of Juvenile Justice Board. Now this Juvenile Justice Board consists of psychologists, sociologists, etc. Now the major problem is, do we have these many people to undertake these activities? Do we have the institutional capacities to conduct this particular Juvenile Justice Board to assess a particular crime committed by a juvenile? That is one thing. And next is the biological argument. Now, if you can see, the most of the things which are being conducted, crimes which are being conducted by a child at this age are due to lack of the risk assessment. And the second thing is, the prefrontal lobe is concerned with this risk assessment, planning, reasoning and judgment. This only develops at the age of 25 years. So it means that a child is not totally developed with his biological functions, and his major motive or involvement with a crime is due to lack of an assessment of a situation and the consequences of it. And the empirical evidence, if you see, the empirical evidence says that in spite of strong penal provisions, there is no positive correlation with regard to the improvement of public safety. And next is the reformation of individual. Stationing these juveniles with adult criminals is hardening them as criminals or future criminals into the society. So this judicial waiver is already failed in United States and UK. So that's why they are coming back into the old patterns. But India is going back into that particular pattern where the empirical evidence proves that it is not a positive activity. And next is, what is the root cause of the crime? Now if you observe, the poverty is seen as the major root cause. And added to that, the lack of proper livable conditions, pornography, broken families, the societal child protection systems, all these are the reasons for the root cause of the crime. So instead of finding solutions by eliminating the root causes, finding the legal ways of punishing the children, it is a retrogressive and detrimental step. It means for the juveniles, reformation has to be the goal, but not the retribution. That is what is our thing. And added to that, as per the international norms on the child rights, if you can see, India is a signatory of these child rights. Now, according to this, a child definition has to be less than 18 years. The present law goes against this international convention. So these are the things we need to understand. So again, my orientation is this. The purpose of a law is reformation, not retribution. It means the child has to be reformed. The next thing is land boundary said to be the landmark. Now understand, already land boundary agreement between India and Bangladesh is clearly discussed to you. But with regard to this chart, I have some beautiful points to make. If you can observe, the most number of amendments came through during the emergency period. But wherever the coalition governments were existing, the number of amendments are very low. It means that the strong government at the center has directed for a decisive actions even with regard to the constitutional amendments. In this case, if you can see, till now we have passed 100 constitutional amendments with including the present one. So first thing is, a decisive action by the government. It is related to its majority in the parliament. And next is, it is also related to the position of the prime minister. And the third thing is, if too strong a majority for a particular party centered around an individual leadership, it may bring in autocratic tendencies which can even undermine the constitutional provisions which can be learned from the emergency imposition in this country, where the constitutional amendments or 42nd amendment can be described as a change or overhaul of the Indian constitution itself. The next thing is the early marriages in India. So with regard to the women and women rights in India, so let us see some beautiful points over here. The first thing is, there are two approaches. As of now, the child marriages majorly, they are being dealt from an age perspective. It means that we have to increase the age of the marriage. That is what is the major orientation. Now there is an NGO that is called a Nirantar Trust. It has given a report, Early and Child Marriages in India and Landscape Analysis. So what it says is, the organizational work is focused on addressing the problem of age in child marriages. So the next thing is an empowerment approach. What the report suggests is, an empowerment approach is necessary. What an empowerment approach is, it is based on the choice. So especially the major reasons the report has analyzed are this. The first thing is, in the public spaces, the discussion on the sexuality of the woman is very much reduced, is absent in India. So the woman's sexual desires or choices for the sexuality are very much limited. Now if you can see, recently Ms. Deepika Padukone voice on My Choice video, it talks majorly about the choices of the woman. Now if you can talk about the sexuality is so limited, even the talk against contraceptives and also safe sex is limited in public spaces. The NFHS survey, National Family Health Survey, what it says is 70% of the women in India marry before the age of 20 years. And added to that, the report says the reasons of child marriages or early marriages in India, they are concerned with economics of marriage. And next is, with regard to the educational and institutional gaps on marriage. So economics of marriage, it means, for example, the relationships, the issues of dowry and everything comes up. Next is educational and institutional gaps. Next is issues of sexuality. And next is the late age means less chances of getting a woman married. So a centrality of marriage is believed as compulsory in this society. And these are the various issues which are analyzed as the reasons for the marriage in India. And next is the role of media with regard to the disasters. Now, there is a problem with regard to broadcasting media in India. So the broadcasting enterprise is being in the race for the TRPs rather than for the need of the society. So during a catastrophe, the media can play an active role. So yes, before the catastrophe, it can spread the message about the prevention or give an early warning. It can activate the early warning systems. If you can see in India, the tsunami related information was given especially by the community radios in the Puducherry area which were established by Swaminathan Foundation. So early warning can be effectively addressed by the broadcast media. And second thing is, it can act as a conduit of information. So that especially during a emergency, the information bottlenecks are major hurdle. So this conduit can be created through these channels. But however, seeking for emotional responses at the time of a tragedy and broadcasting these emotional responses, they do not fall under the ethos of the journalism and they violate the survivor's right to privacy. And I tell to the people, for example, if there is a huge tragedy in the family and they keep the mic before you saying that how do you feel about the tragedy. So that's how the media is behaving nowadays. So this brings in the centrality of regulation of media again. So the second thing is Levenson Committee. It has given a report on the regulation of the media in UK. Try to go through the recommendations of the Levenson Committee. So understand the conclusion. The ethical journalism, it has to place the humanity above the professional urgency. So the TRPs, more than the TRPs, the humanism has to take a role. And the next is fiscal federalism. Now there are beautiful points over here. The first thing is the 14th Finance Commission. The 14th Finance Commission, it has increased the devolutions to the states from the shareable pool of tax. What is that increase? It is up to 42%. Now it means that the states will have more and more untied funds. So what are the meaning of this untied funds? So the states can plan for the spending of these particular funds. Between 2000 to 2015, the central sponsored schemes and conditional grants, central sponsored schemes, they have increased from 0.67% to almost 1.39% of our GDP. It means that the central sponsored schemes are increasing. It shows the centralization in the functioning of the fiscal federalism. The central sponsored schemes also brings in one size fits all approach. Now again, if you can observe, there are three lists: union list, state list and concurrent list. The union government is spending on the state list and concurrent list. Now, the actual spending between 2002 to 2015 or 2005 to 2015, if you take about the amount of spending is increased on the state list and concurrent list, but the amount of spending on the union list has decreased. So the union is spending less on the union list, but more on the items of the state list. It is majorly why? Because of the central sponsored schemes. Increase in the central sponsored schemes. This has become the major fiscal strategy in India to achieve the defined targets under various sectors, such as the healthcare sector, National Rural Health Mission. So, if you talk about education, everywhere the central sponsored schemes are existing. Now, in these circumstances, there are 34 central sponsored schemes, but most of the expenditure on these central sponsored schemes is based on only 4. Almost 70% of the expenditure is made on these 4 central sponsored schemes. So in this case, what this particular article supports is the principles of restructuring of the finances are: 1. There has to be fiscal autonomy to the states. The center has to confine to its expenditure on the union list. And second thing is, with regard to the non-finance commission transfers, there has to be transparency. Now, there is almost 15% of the fiscal space which is available for the center to spend on national priorities. The central government has to spend these monies or this much of money on or in the spirit of the cooperative federalism. So these are the things. Let's recapitulate. So there are central sponsored schemes have increased. It showed in the relative spending of the union government on state list and concurrent list. So because of this, the tied funds have increased for the states. Now 14th Finance Commission has recommended for greater transfers. Because of this, the amount of allocations from the center to center sponsored schemes is going to come down. In this context, the center has to confine itself to the union list expenditures and more fiscal autonomy has to be given to the states. And the remaining expenditure which the center is been making, it has to spend them in the spirit of the fiscal federalism. Now, this is one of the beautiful chart which is there in your second ARC report. Please go through that, how the funds gets transferred from the center to the states. What are the various routes? Gross budgetary support. Now finance commission, and then various central sponsored schemes are Internal and external budgetary resources. These are the various things you just, it can be covered in your regular class. Please go through this particular chart. Thank you very much.